Dr. Ross Greene, who brings over 40 years of experience working with students with all types of disabilities, trauma exposures, and lagging skills. Greene centers the kids do well if they can philosophy and collaborates with students to prevent crisis and conflict. He is here to show us how to do the same. Dr. Greene is an internationally renowned speaker, author, Harvard professor, founder of the Collaborative and Proactive Solutions model, and has been a steadfast supporter of our work to eliminate isolation in Washington, testifying before our legislature multiple times. Dr. Greene's statewide trainings, Moving from Power to Problem Solving and True Crisis Prevention, are also recorded and available for clock hours through the OSBI website. We'll make sure you have those links. Dr. Greene's an invaluable resource for us. We are so grateful for your time and presence with us today. Dr. Greene, thank you.
Thank you for inviting me to do this. And boy, I don't often get to see what I looked like 20 years next to what I look like now. Um, Not a pretty picture now. Anyways, let's get that off as quickly as possible. Well, that can stay. I'm going to show you a video right up front here. But first of all, thank you for inviting me to do this. I guess I view my role as keynote speaker, given that it's a 30 minutes, is you get, I want to inspire you and help you recognize that change is possible and that Washington State is actually moving way faster than a lot of other places. You are proof that although it is great to get legislation passed, you don't have to get legislation passed to make progress. Washington State is the proof of that. Doesn't mean we should give up on trying to get legislation passed, but y'all are getting there anyhow. We passed legislation here in Maine a few years ago, and the results have been more mixed. So even passing legislation doesn't guarantee you anything. Um, why is this so critical? I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, so you probably don't need me to talk about that. But you should be aware that a study that was published in 2021 documented 79 deaths of kids in the United States while being restrained. And of course, death is the most extreme outcome, doesn't take into account the huge numbers of injuries and the trauma caused by these practices. So I want to show you just a 2.5 minute clip from a longer video that Lives in the Balance produced with End SAR, Michigan. Um, and I'm just going to show you a few clips of it to speak to the trauma of being restrained and secluded. Just to inspire you, this could be triggering for some of you, so watch these next 2.5 minutes with discretion. This is a video that we helped NSAR Michigan, the collaborative effort between us and NSAR Michigan. They are finding it to be very useful in the persuasion department. So let's put this up here now. I think I'm sharing. Let's see if I'm sharing. Am I sharing? I'm not sharing. Now I am sharing. Let's watch 2.5 minutes of this. I've edited it just so you see some of the clips. Of course, if Washington State needs a video like this, Lives in the Balance is also happy to make that happen. But here we go.
I was, I always want to say a victim. I was a victim of seclusion and restraint throughout my childhood, so which started in elementary school, and I was very little. Um, and I always feel like that was a turning point in my life where things started to go downhill, and it became a cycle. I remember when the first time that it happened, I was embarrassed. I was frustrated. I was angry. I had obviously, gone into freeze mode, and I don't know, didn't really know what else to do, um, but just shut down. Um, and I remember that, and I also remember like having then a sense of dread, like about school, about the teacher, about my classmates who saw me, dragged out as this little kid. So being secluded and restrained, especially so early, definitely um, affected my ability to trust adults, all adults, teachers, professionals, um, and be in school. School was the most unsafe place for me to be in my entire life. And that never went away.
All I can say for people that have no idea what seclusion and restraint is that I pray that you never, ever experience that. And I pray that no one you know and love ever experiences it.
I think it begins with training. I think it begins with a paradigm shift. Think it begins with adult professionals realizing that when I have to assault a child somewhere, something has gone wrong, and the onus is on me as an adult to figure out where that went wrong and to work towards correcting it.
Who's listening? Like, who can do something? Who can change something? Who can really change this system up? That's what I want to know. Who cares about our children?
Who cares about their children? You do. And that's why you are here on a Saturday morning. You know how important this issue is. If you want to see the entirety of that mini documentary, you can find it on the Lives in the Balance website. I'll give you the URL at the end here. On our public awareness page. Can also watch a corporal punishment video that we produced with the state of Arkansas. But this is the slide that I usually start with when I'm talking about the need to rely less on de-escalating, restraining, and secluding kids. This is the sequence of those practices. What you're seeing on the screen here is 5 bubbles in a declining sequence. That's actually symbolic. In green, I changed it from blue while I was listening to the proceedings first thing this morning because I heard Patrick talking about the blue room. I quickly changed it to green, which is in some respects a little bit more fitting, at least in one, but there's no E at the end. In green, everything that's early, what we might call true crisis prevention. In red, everything that's late, crisis management. We don't want to be late. We want to be early. We don't want to be in crisis management mode. We want to be in crisis prevention mode. The more we are truly preventing crises, the lower the odds that we will lay hands on a kid. But this is a very important sequence to go through because it lays bare some misconceptions and some common practices that a lot of people think of as crisis prevention, but aren't. What's going on in the green bubble? For now, because I've got an entire slide for the green bubble. The green bubble is where we are identifying the expectations a student is having difficulty meeting. Notice we're not identifying their concerning behaviors as we've been doing for decades because we already know what their concerning behaviors are. And because, as red bubble number 2 is going to tell us, their concerning behavior is late. We don't want to be late. We want to be early. Early is identifying the expectations the student is having difficulty meeting proactively, and proactively then doing 2 things. Number 1, solving some of those problems. In the collaborative and proactive solutions model, we refer to those unmet expectations as unsolved problems. Sometimes we also call them problems that have yet to be solved. Sometimes we also call them problems that are waiting to be solved. They're easily identified, but to identify them, we would need to focus far less on the behaviors that are being caused by those problems and start focusing instead on the problems that are causing students concerning behaviors. So one thing we're doing is we're solving those problems. In the collaborative and proactive solutions model, that problem solving is collaborative, meaning with the full involvement of the kid, and proactive, meaning early, not late. Um, the other thing we're doing in the green bubble is we are putting some of those expectations on hold, at least for now. Not forever, for now. And at least for now, the reason we're doing that is because a lot of these kids have many unsolved problems. A lot of those unsolved problems are very old. Kids have been having difficulty meeting the expectation for a very long time. By the way, the fact that they're old makes them predictable and makes it possible for us to identify those unsolved problems proactively. But if we're not going to be able to solve them all at once, by the way, trying means we're going to end up solving none of them, then some are going to have to get put on hold. Just the green bubble is how we have helped many, many school systems dramatically reduce or eliminate their use of restraint and seclusion. The green bubble is where the action's at. But what are we mostly doing still in places that are still restraining and secluding kids? Well, the prototypical adult first response to an expectation that a kid is having difficulty meeting is red bubble number one: push harder, insist harder. Founded apparently on the belief that insisting harder elicits better performance. Um, I got to tell you, I'm not feeling it. Um, my experience is that if you push kids harder to meet expectations you already know they cannot reliably meet, you are not going to elicit better performance. You are going to elicit red bubble number two, concerning behavior. Behavior that communicates to us that there's an expectation the student is having difficulty meeting. Of course, we knew that already. So a big question we should be asking ourselves, and this will come up in a few slides, is why are we putting expectations on kids we already know they can't meet? Is that what it means? Is that really the best definition of having high expectations? No, it's not. But I want you to notice something very important. I already pointed this out. The behavior's late. The behavior is just the frustration response. The behavior is the distress response. The unsolved problem that causes the behavior already happened. If the kid's concerning behavior is highly problematic, what are we adults going to conclude? Well, based on our crisis prevention, but really crisis management training, we're going to conclude that the kid is becoming escalated. And what are we going to do next? What our crisis prevention, but really crisis management training taught us to do next, we're going to de-escalate the kid. As depicted in this graphic, you are now very late. And if you are now very late, you cannot possibly be in crisis prevention mode. No, you're in crisis management mode. When our de-escalation efforts don't get the job done, and they frequently don't because they're late, then what do? We lay hands on the kid in the form of a restraint or a seclusion, or what you all in Washington State call an isolation, or what in prison they call solitary confinement. You are now very, very late, and you cannot possibly be in crisis prevention mode. You are really in crisis management mode. And what have we also been taught about those strategies? What have we been led to believe that those strategies keep us and the kids safer? I am aware of no data telling us that that is the case. In fact, The data and my anecdotal experience from a long time ago when I was restraining and secluding kids um, is that it's when we're restraining and secluding kids that they and we are actually more likely to get hurt. That is a critical slide for telling us what we should be focused on if we want to stop de-escalating, restraining, and secluding kids. Don't wait for the behavior to occur. So often we're waiting for the behavior. Nope. What we should be focused on, what we should be identifying, especially in the case of the kids who are being restrained and secluded, are the expectations they're having difficulty meeting, their unsolved problems. And in the CPS model, we have an instrument that we call the assessment of skills and unsolved problems. It's free on the Lives in the Balance website. It has been helping many, many schools get in front of concerning behavior by identifying all of the expectations particular students are having difficulty reliably meeting. What you'll also find in the Lives in the Balance website, also free, is a 30-minute video teaching you how to use this instrument. I fervently believe that if schools, if this was standard, if this was the standard pre-referral triage instrument in every school, we would almost never be laying hands on kids. Let me go back though. I talked about the ACEs before I thought I was going to. See, it turns out that we're set up to be late. And setup has a double meaning. Not only are we set up to be late, I think it's a setup that we're late. There's actually a lot of money in teaching people what to do when it's already late. Um, I've got a new book coming out in February called The Kids Who Aren't Okay. And an entire chapter is devoted to this topic, the fact that we're set up to be late. And the number of things we do that are late is like 4 times longer in that chapter than it is on the screen. But I just want to run through some of these things very quickly. We're giving kids a lot of breaks these days. Um, by the way, the word when tells you you're late. As in asking the question, what should we do when? I want to know what we're going to do before so we don't find ourselves thinking about when. We think too much about when. When the kid is beginning to struggle with a particular task, we give them a break. Therefore, taking a break is late. I've worked with kids who are getting 10, 15, 20 breaks a day. 10, 15, 20 breaks on Monday simply guarantees 10, 15, 20 breaks on Tuesday, because not only is taking a break late, taking a break isn't going to solve any of the problems that are causing the kid to need the break in the first place. We're still sending kids to calming corners a lot, but the calming corner's late. When do kids access the calming corner? When they're not calm. When are they not calm? When they're having difficulty meeting a particular expectation. Once again, when there's an unsolved problem. So the calming corner is late. I've worked with kids, some of you still do, who are getting the calming corner 10, 15 times a day. 10, 15 calming corners on Tuesday simply guarantees 10, 15 calming corners on Wednesday, because not only is the calming corner late, the calming corner isn't going to solve any of the problems that are causing the kid to access the calming corner in the first place. As proof that we expect to be late, um, are the folks in schools that I call the late staff. The late staff, the people we expect to show up on the scene when it's late. In some schools, we call them the crisis manager. Sometimes we call them the behavior intervention specialist. Even if their job title doesn't tell us that they're on the late staff, there's lots of folks in the building we expect to show up when it's already late. Principal, assistant principal, BCBA, school social worker, school counselor, school psychologist, paraprofessional, ed tech. There's also a piece of equipment that is ubiquitous in American public schools, It's the piece of equipment that signals that we're late. Almost everybody in every school in the United States these days carries a walkie-talkie. What does the walkie-talkie tell us when it starts to squawk at us? We're late again. The walkie-talkie tells us we expect to be late. Being late is not a given. We don't have to be late. It's just that we're set up to be late. If we put a little thought into it, we could be set up to be early. Going to skip some of these because I'm already running late. Um, we've been teaching adults that they should co-regulate. Great idea. Um, the prep of co-regulating is often early, but when does co-regulating kick in? When the kid is dysregulated. It's late. Quickly, a lot of the coping strategies we're teaching kids these days teach them what to do when it's already late. What if instead we were teaching them how to anticipate, identify, and solve problems before they get frustrated about them in the first place? Then we'd be teaching them and setting them up to be early. The rest of these are self-evident. De-escalating, restraining, and secluding, late, late, late. Discipline referrals, detention, suspension, expulsion, paddling, late across the board. It doesn't have to be that way. Once again, we could be set up to be early. Being late is not a given. So, besides solving problems with kids collaboratively and proactively, besides putting some expectations on hold, because you can't solve them all at once, what else is going on in the Greene bubble? Well, number one, in that classroom ecosystem, that classroom culture or climate, one of the most important concepts is developmental variability. I don't hear people talking about developmental variability enough in schools. It's a fancy way of saying every kid is different in every way conceivable. Every kid is different. Because every kid is different, every kid is going to need something different from us. Because every kid is different, some are going to have more unsolved problems than others. That's guaranteed. What's walking in the door in a school is developmental variability. What I've been saying lately is let's not get so caught up in our diagnoses. And that's not taking away from anybody's diagnostic pride, but I know a diagnosis that all of us meet criteria for, DV, developmental variability. Because some kids are going to have more unsolved problems than others because of developmental variability. And by the way, the quality of a school, in my estimation, is determined by the degree to which that school responds effectively to the developmental variability that's walking in the door. So good disproportionality is acknowledging not all disproportionality is bad. What's good disproportionality? Disproportionately solving problems with students because some are walking in the door with more unsolved problems than others. It's a fact. It's a given. It's the bad disproportionality that's the kind of disproportionality I worry about. That's where we are disproportionately hitting, not in Washington, but other places, restraining, secluding kids with disabilities and those with black and brown skin. That's bad disproportionality. That's the kind of disproportionality we need to get rid of. And focusing on developmental variability is going to take us a long way. We should be defining good teaching as meeting every kid where they're at. Meeting every kid where they're at. That's the definition of good teaching. That means that every student is their own reference point. Well, there goes high stakes testing. Every student is their own reference point or high expectations. So high expectations are great. so long as every student is their own reference point. That's another mentality that we have going on in the green bubble. We need to help people accurately interpret concerning behavior. As I've already said, concerning behavior is a frustration or distress response. It is not attention-seeking, manipulative, coercive, unmotivated, limit testing. It is none of those. We ought to stop saying those things, and we ought to stop writing them in our functional behavior assessments. Here's a term I could have mentioned earlier, but didn't. Expectation management. Expectation management, simply defined, means don't put expectations on kids you already know they can't meet. Now, why would educators feel pressure to put expectations on kids that they already know the kid can't meet because of a lot of the pressures that we put on educators to get everybody over the same bar by the end of the school year? Expectation management, an idea whose time has come. What have we been focused on? Behavior management. You're going to be managing behavior a lot if you're not focused on expectation management. If we are focused on expectation management, we're almost never going to need behavior management. We're going to use the assessment of skills and unsolved problems in the green bubble to identify the expectations kids are having difficulty meeting proactively so that we can solve them proactively. It's what I've been saying a lot lately. If we never identify those unsolved problems proactively, then we're not going to solve them proactively. And we're always going to find ourselves in the heat of the moment, dealing yet again with a kid's frustration response, with a kid's concerning behavior. That means we're going to have to prioritize. We're going to have to triage. You've heard a little bit about this already because you can't solve them all at once, because we don't want to put expectations on kids we already know they can't meet, and because there are going to be some kids who are so unstable, they're not going to be meeting any expectations anytime soon. Another very important mantra we have in the collaborative and proactive solutions model: stabilization comes before education. You're not going to get any academics out of this kid until they're stabilized. Schools need to know how to stabilize kids. Otherwise, they're going to be spending a lot of money sending them out to get them stabilized. And then finally, yeah, we're solving problems collaboratively and proactively. Look at all that we're doing in that green bubble, in addition to solving problems collaboratively and proactively. So it is critical for school staff to know how to solve those problems collaboratively and proactively. Critical for them to know how to use the assessment of skills and unsolved problems. But a lot of the rest of what's on this screen relates to lenses, and everything on this screen relates to training. And Lives in the Balance is very pleased to be partnering with Washington State to deliver some of that training so that we can get rid of these archaic practices together. Thank you for inviting me to be the keynote. I hope I did my job. You all have a great rest of the day.